Throughout the years, mankind has made various successes in space travel, and in times of need, this is also their last hope of finding a new planet to live on. In 2009, the Kepler telescope was launched to search for an Earth-like planet. 144 years later, the Paleo 17 probe landed on a planet called Tannis and discovered that it was habitable for humans. And then, in the year 2174, Earth came to the brink of extinction, and the battle for the planet's limited resources reached its boiling point. Due to this, the spacecraft Elysium was launched to planet Tannis, carrying thousands of people in cryosleep for a chance of a new beginning for humanity. After an unknown number of years, Corporal Bauer, who is a member of the flight crew, wakes up from his cryosleep only to find out that the Elysium is a complete mess. Due to being asleep for a very long time, his memories are still in fragments. Holding an emergency light stick, he looks for his locker to put on some clothes and sees a picture of a woman who he assumes is his wife. Then, he tries to wake up his superior officer, Lieutenant Peyton. Bauer does everything he can, but the lieutenant's chamber is not opening no matter how much he hits it. Tired, he just decides to groom himself, but while doing so, the power suddenly surges, finally waking up Peyton in his sleep. Acting quickly, Bauer attends to him and explains that they have been asleep for a very long time. He also tells him that the power in the ship is dead for some reason. According to him, based on the code in their arm, they are part of Team 5 of the flight crew, but Team 4 is nowhere to be found. Bauer then asks if Peyton happens to remember their mission or their target destination, stating that he can only remember the train he went through, but not the end goal of their voyage. However, Peyton is just as clueless as he is right now. Luckily, he can remember how to power up the station they're in at the moment. As it turns out, they're in the control room that's connected to the bridge of the Elysium. Peyton tries to use the communication system to reach anyone, but no one is responding. At this moment, they see another empty chamber with the name Cooper on it, but their thinking is interrupted by another power surge. Bauer thinks that the power system of the ship must be free floating between uncoupled circuits. Without a complete picture of what's really happening, Peyton suggests that they should find a way to get out of the ship. With that, Bauer goes through the small ventilation system while Peyton guides him from the control center using their communication line. Not long after, Bauer realizes that he's at an angle and falls, discovering the dead body of Corporal Cooper, who happened to try to escape using the vents as well. Staying as calm as he can, he opens up the louvers, causing him to fall again, but in another locker room this time. Peyton, who hears everything from his end, asks if he's fine, to which Bauer responds that he just found Cooper. However, their communication line starts to get weak, so Bauer has no other choice but to continue blindly without Peyton's guidance on where he should go. Just then, he sees a woman, but she immediately runs away from him. He tries to chase after her, but all he finds is another dead body hanging from the ceiling. Distracted by the dead body, the woman, whose name is Nadia, attacks and pins him down. In turn, Bauer explains that he means no harm and that he's from the flight crew. But Nadia doesn't believe him, instead saying that he should take off his shoes. Although confused, he's about to comply when they suddenly hear a shrieking noise from a distance. When they look in the direction where the noise is coming, they see blue lights and Nadia suddenly vanishes, leaving Bauer alone. As the noise gets louder, the hanging dead body is pulled up and Bauer witnesses how alien creatures feast on it. Due to that, he immediately runs away and finds a place to hide. Peeking at what's hunting him, he gets a clear view of a humanoid alien with white skin who knows how to use a weapon. Seeing this, he hides back in the locker room from earlier, where the alien luckily snatches Cooper's dead body instead of him. When the aliens are gone, Bauer immediately informs Peyton of what he just encountered. In turn, Peyton tells him to calm down, saying that he's the only one he can trust at this point. According to him, he finally remembers their mission, saying that Elysium is on a one-way trip to the planet of Tannis. The only problem is that they don't know where they are or when in the timetable of the mission they were awakened. Hence, they only have each other because no one will come to save them. Hearing this, Bauer also remembers the first time he heard of Tannis in the news as a child. Also, he remembers the woman from the picture and confirms that she's indeed her wife. In this sense, he asks Peyton if he remembers where their wives could be, pointing out that all of the families of every crew member should be on the ship as well. Bauer wants to find their wives and other innocent civilians, not wanting them to be food for the aliens that are on the ship. On the contrary, Peyton says he needs to set aside them for now, insisting that they must prioritize getting control of the ship back. He manages to convince him by pointing out that getting the power back on the ship will allow them to find their families easier. By good fortune, Bauer gets into the security room and manages to find an anti-riot gauntlet gun. At this time, he tells Peyton to lead him to the reactor bay, saying that he can fix it because he turns out to be the head mechanical engineer of Team 5. Shortly after, Bauer sees someone running in the distance when out of nowhere, he asks Peyton if he knows something about Pandorum. Hearing this word, Peyton gets the creeps, saying that it causes the biggest and worst catastrophe in space travel. Based on the story, one of the officers of a space mission had a psychological breakdown, convinced that their mission is cursed. Believing that he needs to save all the civilians on the ship, the officer evacuated them all, sending everyone into deep space, ultimately leading to their death. Not long after, Bauer comes across another hanging body, but this time the man is alive. He helps the man get down and discovers that he's part of Team 6 of the flight crew. In turn, the man thinks that he's from the extraction team, so he gets disappointed when Bauer tells him that he's not. With that, he covers himself in dirt, telling Bauer that he is masking his scent. A little later, the aliens show up, forcing Bauer and the man to run for their lives. But despite what he did, the man still gets caught by the aliens and they feast on his body. On the other hand, Bauer comes face to face with an alien before he continues his escape. Unfortunately, he gets caught in one of the booby traps of the aliens. But as luck would have it for him, a man named Man comes to rescue him. Looking at his code, Man realizes that Bauer is from the flight crew. At this time, he shows his code to Bauer, revealing that he's part of the agriculture crew. However, the two cannot understand each other because they speak different languages. In this sense, Bauer talks slowly, emphasizing the word reactor in hopes of Man getting the gist of what he wants to do. So he tells Man to stay put while continuing on his way to find the reactor. Some time later, Bauer gets attacked by Nadia once again. But Man, who turns out to be following him all along, saves him again as well. Seeing the two people fight, Bauer fires his gauntlet to stop them, catching the attention of the two. Then, he explains to them that they should be working together to fix the ship, not fight together to death. Luckily, the two listen to him and Nadia gets ahead of them, saying that she knows a safe way to the reactor core. But to their confusion, she takes them to a dead hallway and places her hand on a dead scanner, saying that they need to wait and trust her. Shortly after, the aliens start coming and the power suddenly comes back online, scanning her hand and allowing them to enter the room. At this moment, Nadia reveals that she's part of the genetic sampling team. Looking around, Bauer sees the surviving cryo chambers in the ship, realizing that Nadia is living with them all this time to protect them from the aliens. According to Nadia, there were 5 of them when she first woke up, but now there's only her. According to her, this section holds the future of humanity because this is where the civilians are kept in their cryosleep. Unfortunately, they already lost 30% of the population. Also, the reason she wants to help Bauer to get to the reactor is that this section needs the most power to keep the people alive inside their chambers. Meanwhile, in the control room, Peyton is trying to open the door to the bridge manually but fails miserably. Worse, he hears a noise coming near him, so he raises his guard, ordering the one who's making the noise to identify himself. Then, all of a sudden, he passes out. After a while, he wakes up and hears a noise again. But this time, a crew member who's covered in blood and pretty shaken up shows up. Peyton asks what his name is, to which the man says he is Corporal Gallo. He then asks where Gallo came from, and when the corporal says he came from the bridge, Peyton asks him what happened to the ship. But Gallo is still stricken by fear and cannot collect his thoughts properly. Going back to the 3, Nadia takes them next to the section where the engineering crew is supposed to be in cryosleep. Bauer notices that most of the chambers are empty, to which Nadia says that this is the aliens' main hunting ground. As they continue, Man gets caught up with what he sees, not being able to follow Bauer and Nadia, who happen to fall into the pit where the aliens throw the bones of their victims. The two then make their way out of the pit. However, they get attacked by an alien. By good fortune, Man catches up to them and fights off the alien. This gives Bauer and Nadia a chance to fight as well, so the 3 of them team up against the alien and kill it. Yet, they realize that more aliens are watching them and they quickly run for their lives. After a while, they find a place to hide, only to discover that it's also inhabited by another surviving crew member named Leland. There, Leland asks where they are going, to which Bauer says to the reactor core. Hearing this, Leland realizes that they must have just woken up, so he offers to cook food for them. In turn, Bauer asks how long he has been awake, and Leland states that he's been up for a very long time. He then takes the opportunity to ask Nadia what she thinks about the aliens on the ship. But to his surprise, Nadia doesn't think that those are aliens. Rather, they might just be humans just like them. She explains that while in cryosleep, there are enzymes that are put into everyone's body for nutrition and also adaptivity to Tannis' natural environment. However, since they have been asleep for an unknown number of years, she thinks that some people adapted to the ship instead of Tannis, hence the emergence of the arms-wielding humanoid creatures that are hunting them for food. As it turns out, Leland is listening to them, confirming that they don't know what happened to the ship. According to Earth, when the Elysium launched and everyone was already in their cryosleep, the 3 remaining awake officers received a message from Earth. It is then revealed that Earth was already destroyed, so wherever they are right now, there's no turning back. This information traumatized one of the officers, resulting in him getting Pandorum. With that, he killed his 2 superior officers and then woke up the others to satiate his thirst for blood. What was worse is he left many people awake to fend off for themselves, ultimately leading up to them, resulting in cannibalism to survive, hence their mutation to those alien-looking creatures as time go by. And to save himself, the infected officer put himself into cryosleep. While this is happening, Bauer, Nadia, and Man feel dizzy. As it turns out, Leland spiked their food because he's actually aiming to eat them, as he also resorts to cannibalism to survive. Due to this, Bauer tries to appeal to Leland's emotions, saying that he won't judge him for what he had to do to survive. Then, he tries to convince him to team up with them instead, pointing out that surviving this long is nonsense if they all just die when the reactor overloads. Hearing this, Leland remembers that there are indeed times when the ship is acting up. In this sense, he asks how much time the ship only has left. When Bauer says it only has less than an hour, Leland decides to free and help them. Concurrently, at the control center, Peyton notices that Gallo is not in good mental condition, so he prepares a sedative for him in case the situation requires it. Gallo notices this and Peyton assures him that it's only for precautionary measure. At this moment, Gallo asks if he knows about the symptoms of Pandorum. Gallo, who said that he had to kill everyone on the bridge because they were infected with Pandorum, tries to justify his actions to the lieutenant. In turn, Peyton tries to get into his good side, being careful that Gallo might take him out next. He thinks that Gallo is the one who's infected with Pandorum, but he's being cautious about his next actions. Just then, Gallo tells him what happened on the bridge. According to him, he noticed the symptoms of Pandorum in his superior officers after they received the message that Earth is already destroyed. So he took matters into his own hands and took them out before they could harm other people. This story somehow overwhelms Peyton and messes up his mind. Shortly after, he's surprised to hear from Bauer, who uses Leland's radio to contact him. Bauer asks him to access the reactor core system and asks how much time they left, to which he says they have about 47 minutes to restart it before it shuts down. Hearing this, Bauer asks him to give them a path and guide them through the ship. With that, Peyton starts to work on opening up the door to the bridge to gain access to the whole layout of the ship. Yet, Gallo points out that they should think of a way to save themselves instead before the ship completely dies. At the same time, on their way to the reactor core, the group comes across a kid creature. Just then, they realize that the creatures are breeding. Man wants to kill it, but they stop him, saying that it's just a kid. However, as soon as the kid gets away, it calls the other creatures and they chase after the group. On the run, they manage to hide in the section where the family of the crew members is supposed to be in cryosleep. At this moment, Bauer remembers that his wife wasn't on the ship in the first place. According to him, the reason why he enlisted in the voyage is that his life left him after telling her that he wants them to go to Tannis. Then he also sees the cryo chamber of Peyton's wife and comes to a sudden realization, declaring that he finally remembers everything. Going back to Peyton and Gallo, their argument gets intense because Gallo wants to get out, so he threatens Peyton to put him inside his cryo chamber. Yet, when he's inside, he suddenly gets mad and wants to be out, but Peyton says it's for his own good. Meanwhile, the group finally reaches the reactor core. Unfortunately, Bauer falls on his way to the core, revealing that the section is the creature's breeding ground. Thinking quickly, Bauer wraps himself with the shredded skins of the creatures while Nadia gets into the core and waits for Bauer. However, the creatures are woken up, so Man drops the ramp to delay them. Just then, Bauer gets to Nadia, and he finally restarts the reactor core, bringing the power back to the ship. But their problem is just getting started, so they immediately run away from the creatures. While on the run, Leland gets ahead of them and closes the door at Bauer and Nadia, while Man fights off what seems to be the leader of the creatures. Giving him a spear, Man and the creature battle to the death, with Man coming on top. However, a kid appears and finishes him off. At the control center, Gallo gets out of the chamber and Peyton is forced to fight him off. While continuously having his mind messed up by Gallo, Peyton tries to sedate him. However, when he finally manages to inject him, it is revealed that Peyton is alone all this time. As it turns out, this man is not Lieutenant Peyton, but is actually Corporal Gallo, who got the Pandorum and killed his superior officers, ultimately causing evil to be born in Elysium because of his wicked mind. He just happened to get into Peyton's chamber, which results in Bauer and even him being confused about his identity. The younger Gallo he's been talking to all this time is actually his subconscious, waking him up into thinking that he is Lieutenant Peyton. Subsequently, Leland gets to the control center and finds Gallo, who doesn't hesitate to kill him on sight. Not long after, Bauer and Nadia manage to get there as well, seeing Leland's dead body. Confused, Nadia asks what just happened, to which Bauer tells her that the man he's calling Peyton all this time is the crazy Gallo. They head straight into the bridge and Gallo opens the blinds, revealing that they're not in space, but underwater instead. Just then, the system shows that it has been 923 years since the mission began, meaning that they're already been on Tannis for around 8 centuries. A fight then breaks off between Bauer and Nadia against Gallo. But with the creatures breaking in, Bauer shoots a panel and a piece of it ricochets at the window, causing it to break and the water to flood Elysium. Acting quickly, Bauer takes Nadia to his pod, and they get launched into the surface while Gallo and the creatures drown in the bottom of the ocean. Then, other surviving cryo chambers get launched into the surface as well as part of the emergency evacuation due to the water breaking in. The movie ends with Bauer and Nadia, along with the other survivors who are just waking up, looking around their new home, the planet of Tannis. Getting a 30% critic score and a 49% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes shows how the movie didn't deliver quite well. Although for a casual sci-fi fan, this movie is easy to love, but if you dig deeper into it, you will find how underutilized both the conflicts are, referring to Peyton Bauer and the creature. In the end, both are wasted potential, especially for a film that has almost 2 hours of runtime. Overall, this is still a pretty decent movie to watch with enough horrors and really great potential.